talk about Baby Reindeer and its very accurate depiction of grooming, which I don't think we talk about enough. So this week on the F the Nice Guy podcast, Kate and I talked about grooming. Go check out the episode, it dropped today. But we talked about the fact that I have seen a lot of videos saying that Richard Gadd's character was not a victim of Darien and that he was an active participant. And as someone who has been groomed myself, I have a lot of thoughts about that. Now, of course, I know this is based on Richard Gadd's true life experience, but I'm going to talk about it as if it's a show. So I'm going to talk about him as Donnie Dunn. So Donnie Dunn is an aspiring comedian. He has big dreams of being famous, but unfortunately for Donnie, those dreams are not coming true. He's working a dead-end job, working at a bar, and of course, that's where he meets Martha. And I would even argue that a majority of the things that happened with Martha would not happen had Donnie not met Darien. But let's get into it. So Donnie meets Darien at a bar. But there's something that happens prior to their meeting that I think is really important. The first guy that Donnie actually meets at this bar is this writer. And he says he's on the writing team of Cottonmouth, which is a show that is, I guess, incredibly popular and that Donnie really likes. Donnie immediately showcases himself to be kind of insecure, wanting his attention and their validation. We even see him promoting his comedy show, which, of course, does not go well with those dudes. He's visibly embarrassed, they just blew him off, and who approaches him right at that time? Darien, of course. Now, the context of when Darien chooses to come over is super important, because now Darien knows that Donnie is seeking approval, that Donnie wants validation, that Donnie's some type of comedian, he has a show, he wants to be seen, he wants to be recognized. And as all my ladies can tell you, so often the man who rescues you is often the true danger. But he approaches as if he's rescuing Donnie from these mean guys. He starts up a conversation, they're acting very friendly. He even kind of jokes back and forth with Donnie about the show, and Donnie ends up saying something like, yeah, well, it's about the acting anyways. That's when Darien reveals, oh, just kidding, I'm the writer of Cottonmouth. And also, that kid was not the writer, he was the writing assistant. There are two things here that I think are super important but easy to miss. Donnie feels like he put his foot in his mouth in this scene because he talked bad about the writing, but Darien really encouraged it. He talks about how the show's not for him, and he lets Dunn talk shit full well knowing that he's going to be like, that's actually my show, and that he would then be insulting him. And that sets up an interesting dynamic because right away, Dunn feels stupid and like he needs to make it up to him. And then he gets to be like the forgiving, like, oh, no, it's no big deal. But why wouldn't you stop the conversation when you knew it was going in that direction? Why? Because it makes you look good and it makes him feel stupid. And additionally, the fact that his writing assistant was that somewhat attractive, somewhat like effeminate guy showcases what type of men Darien likes to surround himself with. We know later he's into the power dynamic, and if someone's going to be like that, they're going to enjoy that power dynamic in other areas of their life. So right away, we've established a dynamic, right? Darien knows Donnie is desperate. Darien knows that he wants validation and to be accepted, that he wants to break into the business, and that he's not successful at the moment. He also knows that Donnie idolizes him. Groomers will always put themselves on a pedestal. Like in my case, it was just an older guy who I thought was so cool. Simply because he was older and I wasn't old enough to understand that he was not anything. But then what happens? Darien shows up at Donnie's show. I mean, just look at how happy he is to see him there. And then, of course, the whole show he's going all out, and it's very clear he wants Darien's approval. Now, Darien gives him his business card at the end of this. He says that he wants to help him with the show. He wants to work together. But there's one important thing he does that I think, again, could go under the radar. It happens when he's leaving the show. They have this little exchange, and Donnie is obviously being awkward because he really values this guy's opinion. And at one point, he's like, you're a little bit strange. Donnie seems somewhat embarrassed. And then he says, don't worry, I don't mind a bit of strange. Now, of course, there's some implications of I don't mind a bit of strange, but there's more to it. There's a very common manipulation tactic that groomers tend to use, narcissists use a lot, but it's where they will say like something negative about you and bring your confidence down, but then say, but I don't think that. Like if you're dating a younger girl and you say something like, God, yeah, I mean, I think most people would think someone your age is really immature, but I don't think that. It brings down the person's confidence and it also aligns you to them. And down the road, it really leads into like, oh, well, I got to keep this person because everybody else thinks I'm terrible. Ugh. And this leads into one of the main things with grooming, which is like, I see you. I know you're a special star. I know you're unique. I know you're different. Nobody else understands you like I do. They really want you to feel special. They want you to think your relationship with them is special. And of course, in this relationship, Darian really starts to dangle the carrot of, I have these connections, I have this career, and if you just listen to me, if you just do the right thing, you're going to be a star. He's constantly building Donnie up, like all of these dreams that Donnie had and this vision of himself that had been like absolutely destroyed by these bad shows he was having. All of a sudden, Donnie's coming in saying, no, you were right. You are amazing. You are great. You just need me. I will give you everything you've ever dreamed of. And of course, we know that came with strings attached. We also know that Donnie and Darian had a lot of good experiences together prior to what goes down. They would go out drinking a ton, they would laugh. Now there is little references to Darian kind of being sexual with him, but nothing that's alarming. So they built this relationship up on Darian being really kind and taking him out and even giving him advice and making his show so much better. And then Darian disappears. Now one could say, okay, well that's just, he got interested in something else. But I would argue it is a key and essential step in Darian's grooming. Because what happens? Donnie absolutely has a breakdown over it. He doesn't know why he left. He doesn't know what he did wrong. He was essentially addicted to the attention from Darian, and then he had to go cold turkey. And like even here, he has gotten into an Oxford acting school, which is an amazing achievement. And he says that it meant nothing to him because it wasn't the same as being with Darian. Darian made him believe he had already made it, that he was this close to breaking through. He talks about how going back to school made him feel like he'd taken a misstep because he was already so advanced in his career with Darian. So now Darian has taken the joy out of everything else besides working with him. And what I would bet would be that Darian was just absolutely flooding his brain with dopamine and then taking it away, and he wants that high again. And we know even early on Darian was using alcohol, but eventually, of course, he starts using drugs, which then, of course, he's addicted to that as well. And then Darian comes back and he wants Donnie to work with him. And guess what he does? He brings him back to his apartment. This was a part that was just like painfully accurate and also infuriating. He tells him that it takes someone very special to be allowed into his apartment. Almost like spinning it like, you're so lucky to be isolated and alone with me. So instead of seeing it as like, this got a little bit dangerous, this is a little bit weird, Donnie is like, oh my God, I must be so good. I must be such a great writer that this amazing guy wants me to be in his space. Ugh. Now, obviously, I can't get too farther into the story, but let's just talk about this moment here. They are doing something that makes them high, right? And he reaches out his leg and he puts it on his leg and is like, is this okay? Is this okay? And I mean, he's in no way able to consent, right? But this is a great way of showing those subtle boundary pushes. Then, of course, this gets into all of the essay that occurs, but I think we need to also think about all of the factors here. Like, as Donnie points out, those things would happen, and then come Monday, he would be brutal to him. Darian would be sending him things like, the scene is crap, full rewrite here. He would have him up all night doing rewrites. So all of a sudden, there's this dichotomy to Darian that there wasn't before. Darian is this aggressive, mean, demanding force over Donnie. But then on those nights where they get to hang out, he's kind to him again. He's the same guy that Donnie knew back when in the bars. So if Donnie wants the niceness, he has to put up with the... Not to mention, Darian just does not acknowledge it at all, which leads to cognitive dissonance for Donnie. And people saying like, oh, he was a part of this, he was complicit. That shows you how bad grooming is. That's what Donnie thought about himself. And that's why it's so dangerous.